Hi there, welcome to Rappler Talk. This is Boris Joaquin. For several years, millennials have dominated the social conversations. By the way they think, by the way they speak, even by the way they eat and the way they dress, the way they are reshaping the workplace. But a new generation is stepping into the spotlight, and this is the Generation Z. This year, the oldest of this generation have actually graduated from college and is entering the workplace. And in 3 years' time, half of them will probably be 21 years old and older. So for today, we invited Pauline Fermin. Welcome to Rappler Talk.
Hi, thanks Boris for inviting me.
Pauline is the managing director of Acumen Strategy Consultancy. And they actually did this study, which painted a portrait about the Generation Z. Can you tell us more about this study? It's a qualitative and a quantitative at the same time, right?
Yes. So this is a study that we started even beginning of this year. There are two parts to it. One is the qualitative, which means we are on focus group discussions around the country. We talked to Gen Zers from 13 years old all the way to 22. To probe deeper into how they think, their motivations, how they view life, what their aspirations are in the future, how they learn, etc. No? So that is the first part, qualitative, and then the second part is a quantitative study, which means that there are specific numbers that we will have. In the quantitative study, it's also we're going to put it side by side with the millennials, the Gen Y, because there's a lot of questions about how different they are and all of that. So we're going to have some quantitative data for that. So this is a study that we did purposely because we're seeing this new generation, coming on board already. I mean, they're entering the workforce. They're the new set of consumers. And also, it's a particular interest for parents as well. So, there are a lot of implications. So we decided to deep dive now on this generation.
And that's the reason why we're interested to have you in Rappler Talk. We wanted to zero into this generation because it's, like what you said, it's relevant to not just the businesses or marketers, but also to parents like you and me. You're parenting 5 children now,
right?
I
have 5 kids. 2 of them are millennials. Yung first 2 are millennials. And then I have 3 who belong to this generation. So it's a particularly relevant topic for me, and that's why siguro I'm very passionate also about learning about these 2 generations because I face them day in, day out.
So if you're a business person, you're an owner of a company, you run a business, you're a marketing person, or a parent, this particular episode is for you. Now let's dive into it. Pauline, how would you define this generation?
Okay. So, typically this generation is lumped with the millennials. So they will refer to, these millennials, ganyan. But in reality, there are 2 different generations. So Gen Z are those born between 1996 to 2012. So right now, they're about 6 to 22 years old, no? Those who are 23 to about 35 years old are who we call the millennials. Older than them, like us, belong to the Gen X. Okay, so the centennials or the Gen Z are those younger than 22. They're quite different. Kaya the reason why we need to separate them from the millennials is because of 2 things. One, the life stage they're in, and second is the historical context. Of these 2 generations, which are different. So let me just explain it a bit.
You want to begin with the historical context?
Historical context muna siguro. So the millennials are those that grew up when technology was still at its infancy and developing. In other words, naabutan pa nila yung Multiply, Friendster. Remember the dial-up internet, right? Where you have to plug something into your computer and wait for the dial tone. So technology was evolving and they grew up with technology. So they knew of a life when there was none of this nice technology around. And when technology came and got optimized, they were very quick to adapt it, to use it. They were very enthusiastic to learn it, etc. By the time the millennials got into the workforce, it's been optimized already. Technology's been optimized. So that's the historical context of the millennials. The Gen Zs, on the other hand, by the time they were of school age and adolescents, technology was already at its best or, very optimized.
They were in place.
They
Yeah,
were in
yeah.
place na. So, technology, so yung internet is through Wi-Fi. Hindi na nila naabutan yung wired. They didn't have to wait for a dial tone to get to the internet. So, they were born into optimized, high-tech, digital environment.
So how do you differentiate that? You have the millennials, the Gen Y, who are like digital
They're digital
natives.
yeah.
Okay.
And then the Gen Zs,
Would be digital what?
mavens.
Mavens, okay.
Instinctive yung paggamit nilang technology. I mean, give a young child now a tablet, they will know far more than what we would know.
That's so true, no?
Right? So they would know how to navigate through all of this, to the point that they will go to the TV and they will actually swipe it. So that's how instinctive they are. No? So mavens itong Gen Zs, natives because they grew up in it. Gen Xers are immigrants.
Oh, okay. Wait, so let me clarify that. So the mavens are the
That's Gen Zs.
Gen Zs.
Yeah.
And who's the immigrants?
Gen X.
Tayo. Okay.
Tayo.
So digital immigrants and then digital natives and then digital mavens. And by the word maven means that they basically own, expertise is there.
Fish in water.
Yeah, okay.
Fish in water. I mean, they I heard one boy refer to Wi-Fi as oxygen.
Oh my goodness.
And my son tells me...
Is that your boy?
No, not my son. But my son told me, Mom, it's not digital. It's not technology. It's just our way of life. It's a way of communicating.
It's their lifestyle.
Yeah, so it's not technology for them. For us, it is. So that's like, wow. But for them, they take it for granted that it has to be there. Of course, life has always been with Wi-Fi at home or, I can get instant access. Google has always existed.
I remember this one talk that you gave a talk about millennials in this
Yeah.
conference, and you said something like, you asked in your research, this is millennials,
Yeah.
you asked them, out their 5 senses, they consider technology as the 5th sense, something like that. So your normal sense are your sense of sight, sense of smell, sense of hearing, and you ask them which sense would they like to give up?
Yeah, so how important is technology for them and would they give up something for it? And somebody said, my sense of smell.
They would rather lose this
they-
than
yeah,
this,
than
right?
The
Okay.
phone, diba? So it's the extension of their hands, etc. Now that's for the millennials. The
Gen Zs naman.
Zs, all the more na it's like a sense to them. It's really, cannot imagine life without it. The millennials, still had an experience of a life without the gadgets, or without instant access to the internet. But the Gen Zs, it's expected. It has to be there. And if it's not there, they get disappointed or they get impatient.
Okay.
So that's the historical context, and that has quite an implication in terms of how these two generations are.
Perspective, behaviors, and how they...
Behavior, expectations, values as well, and attitudes. Then we need to layer in also the life stages.
Okay.
And this is also the, something that differentiates the two. The millennials are already young adults. They're financially independent. They're starting their careers. This is also the stage when they make decisions about romantic love, whether they will, who they will be with for the rest of their lives, whether they do want to be, with somebody. Whereas the Gen Zs are still in their adolescent life stage. I mean, a lot of them are still in the adolescent life stage or middle childhood. And we know that adolescence brings in a particular stage in life where it's a transition between childhood and adulthood. And there are certain needs of adolescents that are innate to that life stage. So when we were teenagers, Boris, we were also, we also had those needs. And what are these? Wanting to belong, wanting to define your identity, your own identity. I'm no longer mommy's daughter. I'm Pao, I'm Patty.
Yeah.
Then there's also that idealistic thinking.
Idealistic thinking.
Yes, idealistic thinking. And it's egocentricity is also something that defines that life stage. So this is a classic psychological definition of that life stage. That when you get into young adulthood, there's a transition, and you somehow graduate from that, and you have your own identity. You're more independent.
Okay.
You want to explore, and life provides a lot of opportunities for you. So there's that will also layer in when we understand these two generations.
So in essence, am I safe to conclude that in essence there's really no, I mean, the difference is very thin in terms of purpose, meaning, search for authenticity. The circumstances around this young generation is really what amplifies
What
it.
amplifies,
Yeah,
yes,
it makes
exactly.
them more outspoken. I mean,
Yeah.
more articulate. I don't know.
Okay, so purpose, meaning, authenticity is something that both generations seek.
Yeah.
But because of that life stage psyche and for the Gen Zs, it's something na I would say nangingibabaw. I mean, it's really something that is foremost in their minds right now.
Okay.
For
Unlike
the-
before.
For the millennials, there are other things that are, probably considered or no, parang there are other things that are top of mind, priorities, and that includes adventure, excitement, being successful in their careers,
Okay.
because of the life stage.
Okay.
Now, at the same time, layering in the digital context, historical context, the Gen Zs grew up knowing that there's a lot of information
Okay.
versus the millennials na they still went through a phase when they did not have access to all of the information. Therefore, this deluge of information is something they more readily welcome. But for the Gen Zs, the moment they came of age, all of this information is there. They're learning to filter. They're learning to seek purpose and meaning. They're much more cognizant of distinguishing what's fake and what's authentic. And that's something that has a lot of implications that I can talk about if we had the whole day. But that's one of the things that I want to clarify, that these generations have that desire, kaya lang mas innate ngayon for the Gen Zs to actually seek that purpose, meaning, authenticity.
So what's the behavioral implication of that?
Okay. So of those
Basically,
things,
the life
so-
stages and the
Yeah.
historical consideration of where the Gen Z has, in a way, evolved or came from.
So the Gen Zs, okay, let's start with one of those things, one of the themes that we're uncovering from the research,
Okay.
which is easy and instant access.
Okay.
Let me just put that in that headline now. And we would say that millennials already expect that. The Gen Zs, the definition of easy and instantaneous access is like within seconds. Needs to be easy. If something, for example, if your website doesn't load in 2-3 seconds, they shut off. If the video they're watching in Facebook is not interesting in the first 5 seconds, they scroll up.
Okay.
But at the same time, they don't like to be disrupted. They don't want to be, pag nanonood sila ng YouTube, for example, and then there are ads, it becomes an irritation rather than something that they'd welcome. So there's a lot of implication in terms of, with the workplace, for brands and even for parents. For the workplace, this easy and instant access to information, to things that they need, to things that they want, means that by the time they go to the workplace, our company, processes and communication systems need to provide them with that kind of information access, feedback, that they have begun to expect from the world. And if companies and the workplace is not ready with that, then my prediction is that, they will get frustrated. So us managers, who are from the older generation, need to be cognizant that that's their expectation of the world and that you carry that through to the workplace. So that's one behavior and implication The other implication to brands, to marketing, is that, throughout their journey to, let's say, being aware of your brand, considering you, buying you, accessing you, all the way to the time that they use it and purchase it, if they try and get information about you and you're not in the touch point that is relevant to them, then you lost the moment already to interact.
Oh, okay.
So if they look for you in a certain channel and you're not there, then you lose an opportunity. Now, remember I mentioned earlier that they also don't want to be disrupted. It doesn't mean that you have to be omnipresent in all channels, because that's expensive for brands and marketers, and it becomes a lot of noise.
It could be annoying to the market.
It will become annoying. So therefore, brands and marketers need to be really smart with having the right message, the right channels or touch points, and the right moments.
Okay, so message, touch points, and channels.
And touch points and moments.
Moments, okay.
Even moments. Okay. So it actually becomes...
Timing becomes key.
Timing becomes key, because if you give the message to her at the time that she wants to watch the YouTube video already, instead of being relevant to her, you become an annoyance. You become you're stopping me from watching what I'm supposed to watch. Just as a very simple example. So it becomes more challenging now for brands and companies to engage.
I want to dive deeper into those two sectors first. I'm itching actually to talk about parenting because it's relevant to me. I have 2 Gen Zers myself. But let's talk about the marketing side. I'm not saying that marketers have mastered marketing to millennials. I'm sure they're still, nangangapa pa yan sa dilim, and they're still trying to figure it out. But what advice would you give them now that the Gen Zs are probably one of the influential generation now in making decisions for a lot of brands and services?
Yeah, they're the up-and-coming consumers, and for many brands and categories, they're what we call the point of market entry. My advice, in Acumen, we developed a model called the brand love model, and as we look at
the brand love model,
what are the steps or the major aspects that you need to look at in order to create that brand love? And we were asking ourselves, is this model and those steps still relevant? And we say yes, all the more, because of this up and coming generation. All the more those aspects are important and critical. And what are those? Get to know your target market, really truly and deeply understand them. As marketer, a lot of the marketers, especially the more senior ones, belong to a different generation. We really need to see the world from the perspective of the Gen Zs. So that's the first one. Really deep dive. Not just as a consumer of water, of clothes, of products, but really what their life context is, which is what we're trying to define and give to them.
Okay.
And so first. The second is define who you are. And when you define who you are, that means what's your brand about? What's your purpose? What's your role in their lives? And not until you articulate that will you be able to be effective in interacting with them. Third is to seek out and have meaningful moments of interaction. So every word is important. Meaningful moments of interaction. As I said earlier, right message, right channels, right moments. So you have to know the journey. Paano ba nagiging consumer? And there are many more steps. It's not like before na mapapanood sa TV yung commercial, they will go to the supermarket and buy. Ngayon, there's more steps. And finally, keep the love alive. So
what do you mean by that?
Keep the love alive.
Relationship, you mean?
Like a relationship. Brand love is a relationship. So keep the love alive. It's constant reinvention and innovation to keep them engaged, but still being true to who you are. You cannot be schizophrenic as a brand. So that's my advice. And really go through the rigor and discipline of all of these four for every brand and every category that you handle. And it's, I would say, really tougher now than when I was a brand manager many years back. Life was simpler then, the consumer was simpler. the expectations were, simpler. Now we're facing a new marketplace reality in a new generation.
Let's look at the employer's perspective naman. What advice would you give them if they're about to hire their first set of Gen Z employees, right? 20 to 21 years old.
Yeah. So, the brand love, the steps that I mentioned to you also apply to employers.
Okay.
One of the things that we do with some of our clients is define their employer value proposition, because there's also competition for good talent.
Okay.
Right? So, one is get to know them. I mean, in 2020, the Gen Z will comprise about 1/4 of the workforce. So they need to actually begin to understand this generation and really see how they should evolve their workplace, their systems, means of communication, means of interacting, and all of that to adjust to this new workplace. And it may require significant investments on systems, digitalization, and all of that, because we found that for some of our clients, they're transitioning, but especially when you're a large company, it does take some time to pivot, but that's so necessary already. Plus, of course, define also who are you as an employer, who are you as a company, not as brands.
And communicate that to them.
Exactly. And communicate that to them. So it's the same principles, that we see that's still relevant as well.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Were you insinuating that they also need to be transparent? In terms of being open to these employees?
Yes. I mean, you hit it spot on, Boris. Kasi, the definition of communication and connectivity has changed, and one of the things really, not just for Gen Z, but even for the millennials right now, and I guess even older generations like us who has been spoiled by technology, is the availability of information, right? I mean, specific example, when you're trying to book a Grab, you appreciate that the car is 10 minutes away or 2 minutes away, etc. So that even if it means matagal that you have to wait, at least you know.
Detailed information. Real time
Information. Flights are delayed. We've come to accept that flights will be delayed, but I need to know, okay, how long will it be delayed so that I can act on something, I can be productive, etc. So that availability of information, real-time information, is a norm now.
Okay. Other than the infrastructure and the tools that they have to put in place, what other challenges? Like, I know a lot of employers are complaining about the millennials now. Not that we're generalizing that millennials are, in a way, short-circuit. Most of the complaints that I hear are short-circuited. Maswerte na kapag nagtagal ng 1 year. Is it more challenging if you hire this evolved generation in a way?
Yes, in a way, and I heard that a lot, because I've been giving, I've been downloading the millennials study to a lot of HR groups, and this is one of the things that they're grappling with. First, let me start with, let's understand them kasi.
Okay.
Diba? Kasi that was the first step, understand them. For them, life is about adventure. They're exposed to a lot of options Unlike us before. I mean, we did not have any internet, so we didn't know that there were different options. When we get employed in one company, it's like the expectation is if it's a good company, you stay there for life. We're career, workers, diba? But the millennials are exposed to options, and they see lots of options. And therefore, as I explained earlier, they'd like to explore. Because life is one, gives me a lot of opportunities. Parang I have to maximize and, try out different things. That's the psyche behind the behavior. Okay. Now, how do you cope with, at the same time, I must say also that the millennials do want empowerment. They do seek purpose, and they do want to be leaders in their company. So there are points of, or needs of millennials that if a company addresses, either in providing them very exciting roles or roles that will allow them to grow and experience things, then that will allow for retention to go higher.
Okay.
So, but they'd have to understand, because it's hard to address the behavior unless you understand the motivation behind that, which is what I explained. So in every company, they'd have to find, retention strategies, that will address that need.
You just have to work harder.
Yeah, I guess na. That's a conclusion for these two generations to deal with them. As older generation, in our viewpoint, you have to work harder because they're coming from a different worldview.
Yeah. Will mobility be an issue?
What do you mean an issue?
Well, for example, a lot of people in the Gen Y cohort would like to work at home or be mobile with their work, be flexible with their time.
Yes.
Would that be a challenge?
Is that
for
a deal
employers?
breaker? That's one of the things that we're finding out from
Actually,
the research. No, is that a big driver now of choosing the company to work for, or the absence of that will make them resign? So that's something that we're establishing. I'll reveal that when we get when we finalize the summary. But we're sensing that it is. In fact, the more progressive companies have already offered or have allowed for millennials to have work flexi location.
Okay.
Flexi location or flexi hours, and because the millennials don't see the reason why not, kasi technology is there. They can work, they can do their work anywhere. So, being advocates of that also in our company, we allow for flexi work, flexi location, flexi time, deliverables based, and all that, because all of the tools are available to them. So,
I like what you're saying. It's almost communicating to our business leaders out there that the challenge really lies behind leadership and how they would adjust to make sure that if they want to have a piece of this generation as part of their employment pool, then they should shape up.
Yeah. And it begins with really opening up their minds.
Yeah.
Not being judgmental, because I guess it's quite frustrating. I've heard this from the younger generation. They don't want to be judged. And as older generation who are immigrants, digital immigrants and digital tourists,
Digital tourists, I love that. Okay.
For the baby boomers, they're digital tourists. They need a tour guide. Because tayo naman, historical context natin, we grew up without it. We were successful without it. So why ask from it now? From me, all of these things. So we come from two different worldviews. And it really, we will not be able to manage each other unless us, older generations, really look at the worldview from their perspective, which is what I guess we're advocating through all of this research to enhance the understanding and empathy for these two digital generations. So,
empathy, it's really key. I'm taking that cue from right there and then, empathy. Let's talk to parents.
Okay.
So how can your insights give advice to parents who are raising Gen Zers right now?
Baka we will take the whole day, because this is a particular passion of mine, because I have 5 kids, 2 are millennials, 3 are Gen Zers, and it was probably in the search for how do I parent them well that really
drove me to do
do a lot of this research, and I saw a lot of implications. So how to parents, and it becomes a lot more sensitive, because when we look at these generations as children, and you have parents who don't understand them or who don't empathize, that's when strains in relationships happen, and that's when a lot of either hurts or happiness will emanate from. One thing that we're discovering, not discovered, but really saw consistently in all the researches, all, bar none, is that family is important to this Gen Z, to this all generations, millennials and Gen Z. At the end of the day, at the core of the Filipino heart is the family.
Okay.
Now, if you have parents and grandparents who are not taking the time to understand and empathize with this, two generations, you can then imagine a lot of misunderstandings that can happen. And that creates friction in the home and in the family that, could be avoided if we start from the viewpoint sana of, let's get to know them, let's open our minds, let's not judge that digital, all
It's
of these
bad.
tablets and phones are are bad, it's evil. No, it's here to stay. The technology will continue to evolve, and we older generations, either as managers, employers, or as parents, really just need to understand, adjust, and see, how we need to do our parenting or how to do our management within their context, and not from our context. And it requires a lot of empathy nga
What have you applied so far? I mean, your personal experience with your children.
I'm not sure that my kids would want to know, no, for me to reveal. No,
In a general sense.
In a general sense, we actually have our own secret Facebook group.
Oh.
The family.
Yeah, that's a good advice. I mean,
Yeah, it's a
families
secret
out there,
group.
create your
Yeah.
own FB groups.
FB group, that's where we share our, stuff, share to each other. Sometimes when we rub each other with, oh, look at this video, ganyan, without everyone looking at it. I mean, so we embrace technology, but with a positive but vigilant attitude. Vigilant, which means that every now and then I check what they say online, what they post, but not judging them nor commenting on their post publicly.
And shaming them
and shaming
in the
them.
process.
We gotta have that respect. That's one. Number two, we do have rules at home,
Okay.
but rules that come out of love and understanding. So that relationship need to be there. We have our own messenger account, just the family, or just the kids. So we embrace technology. We share videos and all of that. But most of all, empathy and understanding is the foundation, and having a relationship, because that's the weapon of parents.
Okay.
And the way to enable their kids to navigate through the digital world, because the digital world is, while it has a lot of benefits, can be dangerous. We know that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of dangers, and therefore we need to equip our children through the character that we develop in them.
I love that. Yeah, you build the values.
The values, the critical thinking, the self-control, and all of those can only be instilled if you have a relationship with your kids, which start from, again, balik tayo ulit, get to know them, empathize, then provide the guidance.
In a way, the digital empowerment and enablement actually just makes them more critical in their thinking,
Yes.
right? So,
Yes.
again, it's like you as a parent shaping up. I need to explain this to
Yes.
my kids very
Yes.
well so they
Yes.
would understand.
And it requires active parenting. Yun nga positive but vigilante. We cannot let the iPads or the computers take control of their lives, especially when they're young. Allow them, but make sure, because part of their brain is not yet developed, make sure that you guide them.
So their choices will be based on the values that you instilled in them. Okay.
Exactly. You
Wonderful.
instill critical thinking.
Wonderful.
You instill adversity quotient, patience. None of
This
that.
this research that you've done, Pauline, is in a way it's really a breakthrough, because although there's several researches out there on this same generation, but it's normally global, or even if they look into the Philippines, these are global experts looking into the locality. In a way, you are the first local experts looking into this generation. The insights are rich. So this is my way of wrapping up.
Okay.
If you were to summarize from the insights that you've gathered from this beautiful research, what are the commonalities that we have with Gen Zs, and what's the uniqueness of this generation?
Okay. Well, both of them are, very digitally connected, mavens and natives. They live in a very connected world. They're empowered. They seek authenticity, purpose, and meaning. But the Gen Y, there's an added layer of being adventurous and experiencing things, also driven by their historical context, as I said, and their life stage. This generation, Gen Z, is quite interesting in that there are their top priorities are, purpose, meaning, authenticity, and there are some behavioral implications to that it will be too long for me to discuss in a 2-minute wrap up.
I know, it's not enough, but yeah, I love what you're mentioning. There will be an opportunity for people to actually
Yes.
know more about this,
Yes.
right? So how do
Yeah.
they get
Yeah.
access to this research,
To this
or where do
research,
they attend in order to hear more from
Hear
you,
more
actually?
from you. Yeah. So we're summarizing and finalizing the report, and we will unveil it during a conference that we at Acumen are organizing together with Salt and Light Ventures. It's going to be at the Brand Bootcamp Conference on July 25 at SMX Aura. There we will have, an hour, 2 hours in total of just unveiling all of this, all of the data, all of the themes that we've gathered, comparing Gen X and Gen Y, what are the key characteristics, the themes, how brands should interact with them, and all of that. So we'll have that opportunity, and I can talk more about these very interesting generations during that conference.
So that particular session alone is the unveiling
Is
of
the unveiling
the data of your
of the
quality
data.
and your quantity
Yeah,
research.
yeah.
That's a brand boot camp on
July
July 25 at
yes.
SMX. It's a whole day event.
Yeah.
But what if they want to invite you as an expert?
Sure.
Just to
Yeah.
they just contact Acumen
Yes.
and your website
Yeah,
and all that?
yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
That's
yes.
how
If
you
they
do it.
want, companies, if they want a separate session for them so that we can also flesh out what the implications are specific to them, to their brands, to the workforce, etc. That's also something that we'd love to do,
Okay.
and they just get in touch with us at Acumen.
So in closing, what do you love about the Gen Zs?
The Gen Z, they're bored. I guess it's the wanting for purpose and meaning. They're youth filled with optimism and idealism, and we need to nurture that. We need to nurture that while protecting them from some of the negative effects. No, there are negative effects. I will not go into that now, but there are some negative effects as well. But if we the older generation, really harness that, I think this is going to be such a powerful, world-changing generation.
Wow.
Yeah.
They really do have the power to
Yes,
change
they do have
the
the
world.
power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They are purpose-driven. Well, thank you so much, Pauline. Thank you for
Thank
being
you for
with us.
inviting me and
Well, there
allowing
you-
me to talk.
Well, there you have it, folks. Thank you for joining us. Whether you are an employer, a parent, or a marketer, whether you're a digital native, immigrant,
or tourist.
I hope you learned something insightful from this conversation, and you could probably use it in building your relationship, especially to this young generation that we call Generation Z. Thank you for joining us.
Okay.